In today's Capitalist Investor, we are going to talk about retirement isn't just about crossing the finish line. It's about making sure your money lasts as long as you do. So we are going to talk about the 5 efficient and critical moves you don't want to overlook. So, Derek, I'm going to kick off the Capitalist Investor today with the 5 efficient and critical moves that people need to just be aware of. You know, maybe you're already doing it, but maybe you can fine tune some of this stuff. And I'll say retirees, but it's for everybody. Pre-retirees, retirees, someone's about to enter retirement, things like that. Or maybe you're just doing some of these things that you're still in your accumulation phase. Mm-hmm. So,
good to know what to expect, what's coming up.
I agree. Mm-hmm. So, first things first is recheck your withdrawal strategy. They always use the rule of thumb, 4% of your account value is around the number you should be spending. If you're higher than that, you will then possibly run out of money. Mm-hmm. There's statistics, between 3 and 5%, so the 4% rule. But you also need to consider higher living expenses, right? But usually inflation and the stock market run in tandem. As inflation goes up, so does the stock market. At least that has been historically. So that's one thing. Factor in possible Social Security benefit, depletion. We've talked about this in the past, where the Social Security, trust fund is supposed to run out of money in 2033. We need to understand that trust fund makes up 23% of distributions to Social Security. So when that runs out of money, what happens? Everyone's getting a 23% pay cut. We're going to pay more in taxes. I don't know. And then also, we need to consider dynamic withdrawal strategies. So what does that mean? Adjusting spending based on market performance. So what does that mean is you don't want to sell low. The most detrimental thing to a portfolio in retirement is creating an income when the market is in a trough, when the market's down in a bear market, down 10, 20%, locking in those losses is a big problem. So what do you do in those situations? That's why having, we've talked about it before. If you want to be ultra aggressive, you want to get outside of that 60-40 or 70-30 model, and you want to be more aggressive with equities over fixed income, you should still think about having about 3 years of your spending income in some type of fixed income component, whether it's bonds or money market or a CD or something like that, so that if the market does dip, you're giving the market time to rebound. So that's those are some ideas. Do you want to add anything to that, D?
No, but obviously that's number one for a reason. That is a huge deal to make sure that your withdrawal strategy matches your savings and your lifestyle.
Yeah, I actually had a case example. I was talking with a client the other day, and this person was having some life uprootal, so like selling a house in one state, moving across the country, changing jobs. There was a time where there was no income, so she had to dip into different accounts, and I've been in contact with this person about a slew of things. This was during tax season, like everything. And then, we're sometime in the middle of summer, and she's like, man, I have all this money, Tony. Where's it coming from? And I'm like, your accounts. Are you full? Are you good now? It needs to be an open dialogue with your advisor, because I don't have access to your checking account. I don't have access. I don't know what you're doing. You bought a house. Maybe you're still spending stuff on furniture or carpet, and I don't know, right? Like, open communication is always good, because your withdrawal strategy is a strategy, and taxes come into play. So understanding what your income is from a primary job, a secondary job, Social Security, pensions, all this stuff, open communication with your advisor is actually the biggest thing, so that we can do things efficient.
Yep, absolutely.
So.
All right, point number 2 here, locking in healthcare coverage. I think this is a great one because, honestly, if you're just, an average person out there, thinking about retirement, healthcare coverage might not even pop into your mind. But it's obviously a huge deal, as it's extremely expensive these days. And whether it's a medical expense or any other expense that you have in retirement, you have to be able to make sure you're planning for the proper amount in your retirement plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like the pre-65 cost and the post-65 cost when you retire is something you need to take in consideration when you pull the ripcord and actually retire. Something that needs to be addressed, because we all know healthcare is expensive, especially when you're doing it on your own.
Yep, for sure.
One other thing is like, if you're eligible to do it, one of the great things for retirement is to fund an HSA while you're working.
Yep.
Now you need to have a plan that is, a health savings plan, an HSA eligible plan.
Yep.
Right. It's not that traditional health insurance. It's the low deductible. Put the money in the HSA because it acts like a Roth IRA for healthcare costs.
Yep, for sure. And I think it. Just a note, it's maybe a little bit too nerdy, but we inflate our healthcare costs a little more than actual inflation.
Yep.
Just because that's what has happened historically. It's actually been a lot more than a little more.
Yeah.
So
we thought we were aggressive, and we weren't in some cases. So. I mean, I get to see our benefits every year for our health plan for our employees and stuff. And I mean, it almost feels like there's never not a double-digit increase every year. It's crazy. Insane. Yeah. All right. What's the next one, D?
All right. Review and adjust tax strategy. And I think this is a very good one to talk about, since the big beautiful bill, or whatever they're calling it, because we've been talking a long time about potential increases in taxes, and it looks like that is not going to happen for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing. But that doesn't mean that the strategies that we've been looking at and implementing over the past 10 plus years don't still apply. So Roth conversions, I would say typically make sense between if you retire at say 65, 66, and your required minimum distribution age of 73. That is typically the prime time for Roth conversions, because you're usually in a little bit lower tax bracket. So the you have to make those calculations every year. I think that's kind of the point I want to make. It's income fluctuates, right? Some people have non-qualified accounts. There's interest in there that fluctuates. Maybe there's long-term capital gains in some years and some not. But make that calculation every year, see if it makes sense. And I always tell people that a Roth conversion is also kind of prepaying taxes for the next generation.
Right.
So it's kind of a mini estate plan as well, because they won't have to pay taxes on that.
Yep. So legacy tools. So yeah, I find it, if you're working, it's usually not the best time to do a Roth conversion, but you can make Roth contributions, something that you should, take in consideration. If you don't have any Roth money, you will be leaving some, tax deductibility on the table. So you have to really think about where you're going to work. When you're working, what tax bracket are you in? And when you retire, what tax bracket are you going to be in?
Yep.
Typically, people are in the same or lower tax bracket. Usually, you're not going to be in a higher one. So, getting the deductibility up front while you're working in your highest earning years makes the most sense typically. And then doing the conversions when you retire, and paying the tax lower. There's just balance. I always have a discussion with clients on. But it's also kind of a feel thing too. It's like, how do you feel about taxes, tax-free money? Because there's pros and cons to traditional contributions and tax-free Roth contributions. Don't forget about RMDs. Yep. So here's the one thing. So the age is 73. If you're over 73 now, you got to start worrying about RMDs. That's why doing conversions are a big deal, because you don't pay RMDs on Roth IRAs. But the one conversation I am having quite a bit is when the next generation inherits an IRA from a deceased loved one, or beneficiary, things like that. The new rules today is that you got to liquidate the account within 10 years. And the conversations I typically start having with clients that are in this situation is we should really consider looking at it now, because I think you want to chunk out the distribution. Right. If you wait all 10 years, like it could be a lot of money and shove you into multiple tax brackets and not be efficient. Again, it's situational, but what I do find is like, hey, we got 10 years, like we should take little chunks so like you don't get a huge you're not forced to do a liquidation in a huge tax bill in the last years. Now, if it's a Roth IRA, let it cook.
Yep.
Right? Sure. You're not going to pay taxes on the distribution anyway. And then charitable giving. One thing that I'm starting to see very popular are qualified charitable deductions, QCDs. Allows people that are age 70 and a half or older to make tax-free charitable contributions from tax-deferred accounts, traditional, inherited, SEPs, inactive, simple IRAs. So you get to take the money out, give it to your charity, and not pay taxes on that distribution. And it counts towards RMDs if you're 73 years old.
Yep, for sure.
So
that's a good one. I've been doing lots of those lately. So, even if, you're just use that for your, like your weekly church contribution, you can give it to the church all at once, or you can even do it over time if you wanted to. But yeah, if your RMD age, definitely worth it to take a look at making your charitable donations right from the account.
Yep. The other thing with just big beautiful bill, as we mentioned before, like I've had a couple of clients like, hey, Social Security, that's done. It's in the bill somewhere. Does it affect me? Honestly, if you're not over age 65, it does not affect you. There's like so many different things where age 65 is the number, the age that, things that have been rolled out will take an effect for those people. If you're under, it doesn't really affect you as much. So what's the next one, D?
Number 4 is simplify and consolidate accounts.
Love it.
Yeah, it's look, life gets in the way, right? People are not thinking about things like this, kind of like we are on a daily basis. You might have a job you worked at for 6 months and have a couple $1,000s in an IRA account. Important to get all that stuff together as soon as you can. I think it's better from a portfolio construction standpoint as well.
Yep.
It's easier for beneficiaries, right? You don't have to make sure all your beneficiaries are lined up across all accounts. And another thing, investment-wise, basically, a lot of people, for whatever reason, seem to leave their accounts behind in their 401ks, at work, even after they retire sometime. It is essential to roll that money out of your 401ks with, usually okay, but limited investment choices to get that into an IRA so you can start getting more specific with those investments for, really everything that we just talked about, but specifically the income strategy.
Yep. Consolidation, love it. Reduces fees, reduces confusion, and will add sophistication to a portfolio. It's easier to have a more sophisticated strategy when there's just more money in the account. Right. You can, if you want to own 50 stocks, it's hard to do that with 10 grand. But, if you got like 100 grand or 150 grand in one account, it's easier to do that. Right. I love the beneficiary things. The biggest thing I'll add to that is if you got an IRA, a tax-deferred account, name a human being for primary and contingent.
Yep.
I know some people have fancy trusts out there, and maybe they're necessary, spendthrift trust things. You don't trust your kid with $20, let alone 200 grand, and they show up, you pass away and they own 3 Ferraris now. Like, what happened? There's different situations, but ultimately, naming a human being is the best way to accomplish the beneficiary side of things. So,
yep.
All right, what's the last one?
Last but not least, establish a monthly spending plan. And hey, look, this goes if you, have, 500,000 saved or you have, 50 million saved. Well, maybe not as much if you have 50 million, but you definitely need to have a very good and solid idea of what you're spending every month, especially when it comes to financial planning. You shift from, saving your whole life into spending when you're in retirement, and understanding how much you need and how much, is going to take to fund your lifestyle is really one of the most essential first steps to coming up with a retirement plan.
Yep.
You really have to, the last thing that you want to do is come up with a plan that says you're spending $5,000 a month, but you're actually spending $7,500 a month.
Right, detrimental to build it. I'm now providing wrong recommendations.
Exactly.
But if any client that has a plan with us learns very quickly that having a budget is very important. And overestimating that budget, like you said, like don't tell me $5,000 when it's 75. Actually, tell me 8. Like let's go over and build around that. Yep. Right. So it's such an important number. It's actually the most important number in a financial plan.
Absolutely.
So as we went through these 5 areas of efficiency and critical moves we need to do in 2025 for post retirees, the big thing is, did it help? Let us know. Is there something we should be adding? Is there something we should go into deeper dives? Let us know. Hit us up with a comment. Let us know what your thoughts are. Future show ideas, things like that would be very helpful. And subscribe to our channel, because we do talk about real life advice that is proven in the trenches. I talk about a lot of case examples because I have a lot of situations that come up on a day-to-day basis. So with that being said, let us know how we're doing, what you would add, and provide some feedback for us.
The opinions expressed in the podcast are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any investment, legal, financial, or tax strategy. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. Please consult a qualified professional about your individual needs.